right, we are live. Yay. Hey everyone, Jackie with Jackie Sweet Shapes here. And if you are taking the class pre-recorded on YouTube, you will want to skip ahead about 5 minutes in, which is when we will officially start. So we'll start in 5 minutes, and if you are here for the class, welcome. I'm gonna give everybody a few minutes just to get on before we officially start. If you're watching and you want to say hi, feel free to comment. As always, I will answer any questions that you might have, and I'll be able to see your comments as we go. How is everyone today? Hopefully you're doing well. All right. So I'll give everybody a few minutes to get on. For this class, you will need a pair of scissors and a cup of water, or a bowl of water. Really, it doesn't have to be much. We only need a few drops. So what I'm doing is just putting a little bit of this extra water in a cup. You can also do a bowl. It really doesn't matter. You just want to have a little bit of water and a pair of scissors. So if you don't have that yet, go ahead and grab water and some scissors. Today is Good Friday. All right. And I can't believe that Sunday is Easter. It's crazy. Feel free to grab some water or wine or anything to enjoy the class. This is going to be a very beginner class. So, I mean, not like super beginner. Like, obviously it's still professional. But it is not as tricky as, say, my spring class that I had, which was 2 weeks ago, I think. So as you can see, the cookies here are pretty basic. They're more fun than challenging. And we're going to be doing a couple of them. We will actually be able to do from start to finish all at one time. So like, if you've taken a class with me before, a lot of times we do like them in stages. So we'll do one, let that dry, work on another one, and then 30 minutes later, come back to the first one. But today we actually have 4 cookies that we will literally do, like start and finish it, start and finish, start and finish, which is not normal. A lot of times we do it in stages. So this will be just kind of more relaxed, more fun. It's Easter themed candy. So we've got chocolate bunny, a speckled egg, the little peep chick, the peep bunny, and then the chocolate covered egg. All right. So again, just gonna give people some time to pop on. Let me know how y'all are doing if you want to comment what's going on in quarantine. Anybody sick of it yet? Ready to get out? What are some things that y'all have been doing to keep yourself busy? I have been sleeping a lot. And I guess like I was told that I have chronic mono, so there's that. But I think that I'm just like really tired because I'm not going to the gym and I'm not as active as I usually am. Like a typical, week for me is just like go, 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 working, gosh, anywhere from 60 hours to 120 hours a week, which is crazy, I know. And then going to the gym every day, and I'm just like very like active, but it's like I just want to sleep the whole time, and it's not really a good feeling. Like I think in the beginning, like a week ago, I was like, oh, this is nice, catch up on sleep, this is what I need to slow down, this is great. And then this week I've just been like, okay, I'm so over this. My dad bought a stationary bike. Yeah, the Pelotonic. Is that what it's called? Peloton? What am I thinking? Pelotonic. And that's a great idea. Like, we don't have any space for any equipment here, so I need to start I was doing like workouts at home, and then I got really busy with Easter cookies, which is great. I'm super grateful to still be able to work and have a job, so that's awesome. But I'm going to start doing workouts again, probably starting tomorrow, which I'm excited about. And somebody asked, how's my husband doing? Jordan, he is doing okay. He is recovering kind of, but it's very slow progress. We're waiting for the virus to kind of settle before we get more answers, but he was kind of in a lot of pain today. But he's in pretty good spirits, and his birthday was yesterday, so that cheered him up. That was cool. And so I had to do some creative things, right? Because, you know, it's kind of hard to celebrate a birthday in quarantine. So what I did was a couple of things. So first I had like 24 Post-it notes because he's 24. And I put them around the house, like just different places. And when he woke up, he went and, you know, started looking for them. And it was like a little Easter egg hunt. And we couldn't find number 12. So we looked for like an hour for this stupid Post-it note. And then I was like, can I just like make another one? Because I don't know where it is. I don't remember where I put it. And so I just made another one. And then this morning, I went to go feed the dogs, and I found it in their like container of dog food. And I was like, wait, so there was a miscommunication. So basically I knew I had 2 in there, but turns out I accidentally put 3 in there because one was stuck to the other. So then Kyle was like, yeah, I found 2 in there, and I didn't look. And so that was where it was, and it was pretty funny. And then later on in the day, we played bingo virtually with his family, and I did like Kyle's 1996 birthday bingo. That was fun. And then the last thing we did was I had a bunch of friends put together videos and sent them to me, and then I compiled them into a movie, and he got to see all of his friends, which was really awesome. So it was good. I think it cheered him up for sure. All right. I think we are going to start. So a couple of announcements. So if this is your first time, welcome. I do quite a few of these. I don't even know which number this is, but I'm probably up to my 50th class. This is something I really love to do. We have these cookies are beginner themed. Starting on Monday, I will have 3 themed do-it-yourself kits for sale. So it's going to be dinosaurs, unicorns, and like a cocktail themed one with some like alcoholic drinks. So like 2 for kids, but if you're an adult and you want to do the dinosaur one or the unicorn, it doesn't matter. But 2 for like kids, and then 1 adult themed one. On Friday, I will be posting my Mother's Day virtual class and my Cinco de Mayo class virtually. So you got those Monday and Friday. And then something I'm super excited about, I am going to be doing a live cookie bingo night. So I'm so excited. So I have cookie bingo cards, and you're gonna get little cookies as your chips. I will send them to you. You'll actually get to decorate 25 little cookies, and then you'll have 2 bingo cards, and we're just gonna literally play bingo for like a couple of hours or however long it'll take. Maybe not that long, but it'll be super fun. And then some of the prizes will, like, people will actually be able to win prizes if you get bingo. and you will get like little cookies that look like toilet paper, masks, hand sanitizers as a prize. So I'm super excited about that. Stay tuned for that. I'll probably be posting that on Monday as well. And y'all are like the first people to know. All right, so let's get started. If you haven't already, make sure you have a pair of scissors and a cup of water. The cup of water we don't need till like probably about 45 minutes, but you will just need a few drops of water. So not like a whole lot, just a little bit of water. So make sure you have that somewhere. All right, now if you haven't already, you are going to pull everything out of your cookie kit, which I have not done yet. And this is what we're making right here. And you'll have your parchment paper, lay it flat. Yours will have lines in it because I had to obviously ship it to you. But just because it's messy, so that's kind of a way just to keep the mess a little bit contained. And I'm gonna open up my kit. So we have napkins, we have your instructions, you have a worksheet, which is the first thing that we will work on. So if you want to lay this here first, great. You have a couple of extra icing bags just in case you cut a hole that's too big, or if you just want to use these for like a later time to make icing, that's cool too. These are my favorite brand. This is what I use all the time. So we're just going to put that to the side, and then what you're going to want to have in your immediate space is going to be your cookies and your icings. So we're gonna take these out. I kind of just stack them. This is the first class that we actually have our chocolate cookies. So because I was thinking chocolate bunny, chocolate egg, why not make the cookie chocolate as well? Which I didn't actually advertise it originally as that. And then as I went along, I love the chocolate cookie recipe that I have. So I just went ahead and did chocolate for the chocolate egg and the chocolate bunny. So you can stack your cookies somewhere on the right or the left. And then you're going to want to have your icings out. Now, if you read your instructions, you would have seen that you actually want to take each one of these icing bags and just kind of massage them a little bit with your hands. You know, kind of like squeeze it down, press it a little bit, just kind of mixing the colors in a little bit. So what happens is, as you know, a couple days go by, which it's been a few days, so I made them on Monday, today is Friday, so we just want to make sure that that icing and the color is incorporated. So before you cut it, just make sure you take each one and just kind of go like this a little bit. And also, we're also going to do the ones that have a line on it. We're also going to massage those as well for about 30 seconds. So we're going to go ahead and do that. You can do it with me. And the thicker icing is the one that has a Sharpie line on it. So you will be able to tell that it is a little bit thicker. If you took my spring class, you are well aware that I made it too thick. So I made them a little bit thinner for you this time. Of course, you don't want to thin them out too much because then they'll lose their shape with like the detailing. So I made it so that it was thin enough that we won't be having as much difficulty, but it's still going to be a thicker icing. So it's not going to be like super, super easy like the thin ones are, but easy enough that we'll be able to outline and detail without having a lot of trouble like we had last time. So every single one has two colors, and then that means that each one has a thinner one and a thicker one. The ones with the Sharpie, you're going to put those in one pile. So after we massage them, put the lined ones on the left or the right, and then all the ones that do not have a line, put those on the other side. So that way you know those are thin, those are thick, or vice versa, and we don't get them mixed up. Okay. We also want to have our toothpick ready. Our paintbrush is actually going to be used with the edible gold. So you'll see a little container that has a little bit of edible gold. It is edible, I promise. And that's going to be with the water. So you're going to take your toothbrush, your paintbrush, and your gold, and just put it with the water. That'll be for a little bit later. The glove is also going to be for that step, because we're going to be getting our fingers a little bit messy. So keep the glove with the gold as well. So paintbrush, gold, glove, and water is all going to be on the side. Okay, you have sprinkles that look like sugar. Those are going to be for the Peep and the bunny and the chick. So you'll need those at the ready. And then you'll also have these little white sprinkles, which are going to be used for your bunny ears. So you'll also want to have those ready to go. And then the last thing that you have is these little sprinkles. Those are going to be for the eyes and the nose of the bunny and the chicken Peep. The bunny and the, yeah, two bunnies, but the Peep bunny and the chick Peep. So disclaimer on those, they are sprinkles, they are edible, but they're very hard. So like when you go to eat them, or if you choose to taste test one, which is fine, just suck on it for a little bit before you bite down, because it is hard. So you don't want to, you know, chip a tooth or anything. And then you all got one of these. These are the speckled eggs. These are for you to enjoy. These are not for the class, but you can eat them or give them to somebody if you want. But that was just a little freebie for y'all. Okay, ready to get started? All right. So the first thing we're going to do is our worksheet. So we don't want to work on the cookies quite yet. If you know this is you're not your first time with me, you know what's coming. But we're just practicing on the worksheet just to kind of be ready for the cookies. So we want to do the pink that has a line on it. We're going to do the pink one first. So what we do is we cut a very small hole. When I say very small, it is really hard to kind of like show you how small that hole is. But there's something that I always say that I think kind of helps people in knowing what that size is going to be. So if you think of a number 2 pencil, the number 2 pencil lead, that width, there's two ways to think of it. The width of it is how big you want the hole to be. But if you cut the little triangle piece off the tip, that little triangle piece that comes off is going to be about the size of a number 2 pencil lead piece that pops off. So think width of the number 2 pencil lead, or think when you cut it, it's going to be about the size of that. Something else that I did think about, because I've been trying to figure out new ways to teach this, one of the things I thought about was if we line up our tip on our worksheet, so do it just like I'm doing, and you want the very tip of that plastic to be on that last line. About where you would cut would be this second line right here. Okay, so I literally just thought of this like 30 minutes ago, and I said, oh my goodness, that is great. That is how I'm going to teach this class, because that's about the size that you want. So it's perfect, right? So line it up, literally just the tip about touching that line, not over it at all. And you're going to cut right here where that second line is. I'm not going to do it because the camera is in my way. So I'm just going to do it where I know where that line was, and then cut right there. Okay, now when you cut, a lot of times that plastic will go flat. So then I like to run my fingers down the other way and kind of make sure that it's a hole. So if I look at it directly on, I should be able to see a nice hole in that icing bag. Okay, a couple of ways to hold the bag. What I do is I make sure that all that icing is pushed down, and then right under that knot is where I'm going to place my thumb and my palm. So it's kind of into my palm, the thumb is pressing it against my palm. I'm gonna tuck that thumb in, and then I'm gonna let my rest of my fingers just kind of rest over that thumb. So again, you're right under the knot, but above the icing, pressing in here. So you're pressing with your thumb into your palm, and then you're going to tuck your thumb in and relax your fingers over. Okay, and then when you're going to do it, you're going to tilt that wrist up so that you're completely like directly over the worksheet or the cookie. And when you squeeze, I'm going to give you a couple tips, so I'm going to start first. When you squeeze, you want to be about half an inch above that paper. So you're not actually touching the paper with that plastic tip, you're literally just letting it drag. The only times that you touch the paper with the tip are when you start and stop a line. So you touch it to let it catch the paper, and then you pull your wrist up, you let it drag, and then when you're ready to finish, you're gonna dip down, stop squeezing, and then pull up to complete the line. A couple of other tips. Sometimes I take my finger and I steady my hand right here. So I'm pressing it here, but it's gonna kind of steady me a little bit so that if I'm shaky, it makes it a little bit more stable. Another thing that people will do is they'll touch their wrist. I have actually found myself doing that. One of my regulars who's actually taking this class, she told me that she does that, and then I found myself doing that. So whatever it is, you know, do what works for you. I mean, I'm teaching you what I do, but I know that my grandma is taking the class and she doesn't do it the way that I teach her. She does it completely different, but it works for her. So whatever way works for you to get that icing out is totally fine. And I would just say the number one thing is making sure that you're up and letting it drag so you're not touching it at all. So just kind of practice lifting your wrist up, your hand up, and, you know, trusting that that icing is going to fall onto the black line. It is kind of, you know, I mean, it does take a little bit of trust. That's why I say that, because it doesn't feel like a normal thing to do. You kind of want to be like you're writing with a pen or a pencil and have it like touching, but it's completely different. So just trust that this works. Starting and stopping, you touch the paper, then you're going to pull your wrist and your hand up, let it drag, and then touch to stop. All right, and then we're going to do the whole worksheet. You might be ahead of me, which is fine. They kind of get harder as you go a little bit, although I will say that the circle is a little bit harder than the heart. But let's just try it out. It takes a little bit of control, a little bit of hand-eye coordination here. But if you are kind of up, you can almost manipulate that icing in the air. So like even before it touches the paper, you could give it a little nudge. If you're up enough and you're kind of controlling it. This does take practice, so don't be too hard on yourself here. This is one of the hardest things is doing the outlining and the detailing. But we're just trying to get the basics down, which is, you know, how to hold the icing bag, letting it drag, learning kind of that steadiness a little bit, making sure you are, you know, squeezing all the way from the top and not having any icing above your thumb. You always want to be right on top of that icing completely. Hey, Erin. How's it going? All right, so the squiggles and the loops are about the same. This icing is actually pretty perfect in terms of consistency for a beginner class. So I hope that, I mean, my icing is the same as yours, so I hope that that's the case for you as well. We're going to do the circle and the heart. You can feel free to do all of it or one if you're a little bit behind. I usually choose to just do the right side. The circle is the hardest. So you just pick any point to start, and then again, you're just using hand-eye coordination to let it drag. And then when you go to stop that line, you have to meet wherever you started, dip down, pull up. And we're making sure that we don't have any gaps or cracks in that line, because that is a barrier for that thinner icing that's going to go inside. So we want to make sure that when we look at it, you know, that circle, for instance, and the heart, that there's no gap anywhere. And if there is, you can do one of two things. You can completely wipe it off with your toothpick and do it again, which also applies to the cookie. Or you can go in and kind of like dot a little bit of icing wherever those gaps are. So in this stage, there are a lot of ways to correct your mistakes, and it's not till you get to like the detailing that you really can't correct your mistakes. But the good thing with this class is that we actually don't have a lot of detailing, so it's going to be mostly just outlining and flooding, which is great. It's a little bit easier when you get into more of the details and like the writing and the flowers and everything. That gets tricky, and then there's kind of like, once it's on the cookie, you can't really like fix your mistake if you have a mistake. So for this class, it'll be a little bit less stressful in that regard. So let's do the heart, and then we will move on. All right. For hearts, I like to start on the bottom, and then when I get to the top, I dip down in the corner, and then I lift back up as I'm changing direction, going the other way. All right. Okay, I'm done. I'm going to assume that y'all are kind of close to being done, but we are going to work on the worksheet for 2 more things. So what we're going to do is practice the flooding. Again, this is a more beginner class, and so that means that I'm going to kind of spend a little bit more time going over some of the basics. So now that we have the outline, we want to do what's called the flooding. So if you're brand new and I keep saying that word and you're like, what is that? I have no idea who came up with the word, but the term flooding is used when you are filling in the barrier with that thin icing. And so you're basically flooding that area with the thinner icing. It's pretty easy. The only couple of issues that you run into are over flooding and also not putting enough in. So there's that balance of putting in enough that you don't see the cookie underneath. You want it to look like a fluffy pillow on top of your cookie, but you also don't want to put in too much icing and then you have a volcano erupting and it's all spewing out the side. So what we're going to do, you can watch me first if this is your first time. You will want your little skewer or your toothpick. And we are going to take the thin pink, so the one that we haven't used yet. We're going to cut a little bit bigger of a hole. So not like too much bigger, but if you cut off about this much, now we're just going to cut off literally a little bit more. Okay, and then every time what I do is I drop it in. We're actually going to practice on this circle. I drop it in, I get it real close or touching the outline, and then I spiral inside and I don't leave any holes at all in the middle, because if I do that, then all I have to worry about is using the sharp point of my toothpick to swirl and push that icing to the outline. And then sometimes there might be air bubbles, so I would pop those, but a lot of times in my icing there are not, so you're pretty much good. Sometimes people will shake and tap it if there are air bubbles or it's not really settling very well. That's another tool that people use, is the shake and the tap. Just don't do it too aggressively. People have broken their cookies while they're doing it. And then you have about 2 minutes before that icing starts to harden. So like for a small surface area like this, no big deal. We don't even need that 2 minutes. But sometimes when you're dealing with a really big cookie, such as this one, which is a very large cookie, you are going to want to put in enough icing that you're not sitting there forever with the toothpick, which is why you're going to, get close to that border, but then completely cover the middle. No holes. You don't want to be able to see the cookie at all, because you only have a few seconds after that to spread before it hardens. For the heart, same thing. Start kind of outside and then spiral in. Make sure it looks like a fluffy pillow on top, and then use the toothpick to kind of spread it into the outline. And then once it's good, you just kind of leave it alone. We don't want to touch it. We want to let it dry. Obviously, for the worksheet, it doesn't really matter as much. And since this is thin icing, you don't have to do this, but a lot of times I'll just tuck the tip in, fold it in, and then I'll roll it up so that it doesn't leave a mess everywhere. My gloves are getting caught. And then we don't have it spilling all over the place. All right. So now that we've done the worksheet, we are going to move on to the actual cookies. Yay! All right, the first one we're going to do, since we have that pink icing, is we're going to do the large bunny. All right, so you can put this aside if you want. Fun fact, while I'm here, if you ever want to make your own sprinkles, you can draw lines of thick icing, let them dry for like a few hours, and then you can go and like break them apart, and you'll actually make your own sprinkles that look like this. I have done that like once before. It's fun, I'm like, it's too much work, I'd rather just buy them. But if you are ever at a point where you have to have sprinkles in a particular color, you can always make them yourself, which is kind of fun. All right, let's go ahead and do this one. And we are going to start with the thick icing. Let me see if I can change the lighting here. All right, so we want to do the entire outline in the thick pink with the Sharpie line on it. So just make sure that's the one you're grabbing, not the other one. Okay, this part's, I would say easy, but maybe it's not really easy for some folks. But all we're doing is just following the outline of the cookie. So you can start anywhere that you want, and then you don't necessarily have to do it all, in one fluid motion. You can do a line, pause, like a lot of times people will pause on the corners, so they might do like this and then take a break. That's fine too. If you feel like you can do it, all at one time, go for it. But we just want to make sure that we're going as close to the edge as possible without it falling off the side. And then we don't want any gaps or cracks. So this is your chance to put the worksheet into practice. We're going to outline the whole cookie, and then we'll let it dry for a little bit. All right. So if you do start and stop a line, just wherever you left off, you want to make sure you're touching that line, and so that there's no gap in between. All right. sometimes there are cracks in the cookies. If that happens to be the case, cracks in the middle don't really matter because you're just going to flood them with the icing and nobody will know. But if you do have some that are like right next to where that outline is, sometimes I will go and I'll do like a little dot of icing just where that crack is, where the if it meets right where that border is, I'll just drop in a little bit of icing right there because I don't want it to seep under, which it probably really won't, but I'm just like sometimes afraid that it will. So yeah, we're gonna wait for it to dry for a little bit, but we want a complete outline that looks something like this. Okay, once as we're waiting, we do want to set up for the next part. So we have our toothpick, our thin icing, so the one that does not have a Sharpie line in it. We are going to want our clear sprinkles, have those ready, the ones that look like sugar. And then you're also going to want 3 black sprinkles, the little eyeball and nose. So if you want to make it easy on yourself, you can kind of just spill those out like I just did and have those ready to go. We will be using these on the next one as well, so if you take all of them out, that's fine. You should have more than you need because we have 3 for the bunny, 2 for the other bunny, 1 for the chick, so you only need 6 of them. But what we're going to do is we're going to add in all of the pink icing, and you can feel free to use the entire, I mean, this is not going to happen, don't use the whole bag just because I'm saying this, but feel free to use quite a bit of this because it is a large cookie. You might not use all of it, you might end up using half of it, but don't be, you know, skimpy on it. Make sure you put enough of that icing in there. We're going to spiral around just like we did on the worksheet. And then while the icing is wet, the next thing we're going to do after we use our toothpick is you're going to take your sugar sprinkles and you're going to put them on to that wet pink icing. And you can also use pretty much a lot of this, except for a couple of pinches will be used for our little chick. And then after you do this, the sugar, then you're going to add your eyeballs and your nose. And our end product will look something like this. And that's what we're going for. Okay, you ready? So let's start by adding in this thin icing. We're gonna spiral, trying to let it focus a little bit, maybe. Sometimes the camera has trouble focusing. Okay, so we're gonna spiral this in, start on the outside. You don't have to be touching that outline, just get really close because that's what the toothpick is for. And then the thing that matters the most is when you put it in the middle, just make sure that you have no holes at all. We're going to completely cover the middle. We're using a lot of this icing. And then we only want to use the toothpick to push it out to the outline. And again, you have, you know, about a minute to make sure you spiral this all into the outline, and then it'll start to harden. If you're sitting here for longer than a minute with the toothpick, you will start to notice that it does kind of harden a little bit. So we're just working in that time frame, trying to get it all in. It is a larger cookie, so it takes a little bit more time. And then if you do want to give it a little tap or shake, feel free, just be careful. We don't want the icing to fall off. And then we do our sprinkles. So we are going to cover it. It'll take probably about 7 pinches, depending on how big your fingers are. And we want to fill the whole thing, the whole top, with the sprinkles so that it looks like an actual peep candy. I don't like those things. I don't know if anybody likes those. I have never been a fan of the marshmallow peeps. Blech. I'm like, those are just nasty. I don't know why, but I will take a peep cookie any day though. And then once you've covered it with the sprinkles, we're going to drop these in. You can do it with your fingers. Drop them in. If they land in a funny spot, you can use your toothpick to move it around or push it in. I'm going to push mine in a little bit. Drop it on and then use your toothpick to kind of place it in a better spot if it lands in a funny place. And we have the nose. The nose is kind of close to the eyes. You don't want them too far. They're all kind of like together. If you really mess up and you put them in and it's just a whole mess and you try to move it and it's not working, just pick them out with your toothpick and then do it again. Get some new ones and then place them back where you want them to go. And you do just want to kind of push them in a little bit so that when it dries, it does stick to that icing. And just like that, your first cookie is complete. So yeah, that only took what, 30 minutes and from the beginning of the class really, but it only took about, you know, a few minutes to make it and finish it. So this is one of the easier ones. I like these as a decorator because it doesn't take me as much time. So cookies like these, you can just kind of push them out real quick because they really don't require much detailing and it just is kind of simple. So I like it. Sometimes I'll go in and add a little bit more sprinkles on the top to give it a little bit more texture because the other ones have seeped in a little bit, but I don't want to go too crazy because I don't want it to be overly sugary. It's already going to be pretty sugary as it is, but yeah, you know. All right, great. So our first one is done. What you're going to want to do is place this somewhere in a spot that it will be safe. So you can very carefully pick it up and put it in your bakery box that your kit was in, or just very carefully slide it over because it is starting to dry and we don't want it to get messed up. So we want to just push it off to the side, make sure it has some time to dry. And it does take about, to completely dry, like, so the top layer of the icing is starting to dry, but for that whole, you know, what is it, like a centimeter of icing to dry, probably is going to take anywhere between 8 hours and 12 hours, depending on where you live. Up north takes a little bit less time to dry. Sometimes cookies here in, you know, Florida, Louisiana is going to be about 20 hours. I once had a cookie that didn't dry for like 24 hours. It was crazy, but it was also in like the summertime. So just kind of a, you know, way to know it's going to take some time for it to dry. So you'll want to let it sit overnight and let it air out and dry. Okay, are we ready to move on? We went from the biggest cookie to the smallest cookie. All right, this guy is kind of easy, but there's only like one thing that's a little bit different is this little bottom part. So when you look at like the candy that is like this, it literally has like this nest. It's supposed to look like a nest. So it's got the marshmallow chick and then it has this little kind of line on the bottom, which is supposed to be the nest, I assume. So we're going to do the outline of the cookie, and then we actually want to draw a line that's going to go from, you'll kind of see where it divots in, but it's going to go from right under the tail. You're going to curve it to where it divots out right here. And so we'll put the icing in, but we're going to actually do the top. So we'll outline everything. We'll put in the thin icing on the top, and then we'll add the sprinkles and the black eye, and then we'll wait for a little bit before we do the bottom part, because if we wait and let it dry. If you've taken a class with me before, you know that I talk about this a lot. But if there's two sections right next to each other, if you do both of them at the same time and you don't let them dry, what's going to happen is when they kind of are drying on their own, they're going to kind of mesh together, but we want them to look very separate. So you do one block first and let it dry, and then you do the other block next after the first one has dried for a little bit. And then what happens is when it dries, they dry separate and they look more like how this is, where they look separate instead of running together. So the next thing we need is going to be our thick yellow, and that's the one that has the Sharpie line on it. And we're going to cut that little hole. You can do it just by eyeballing it, or again, if you want to take that worksheet like I did, you can line it up. That very tip is going to be on the last line, and then you're going to cut where it is on the second line. I know my hands are kind of shaky, but hopefully that helps. I'm going to kind of talk to some of my regulars to see if that analogy helps, because I'm always looking for ways to better explain how to cut these icing bags. And again, just like the first one, kind of run your fingers through it. You want to look at it, make sure it looks like a hole. Make sure it looks like the width of a number 2 pencil lead. And then sometimes I'll take my napkin and just kind of test it out, make sure it's coming out all right, because it will be a little bit watery coming out first. And then when I've done that, I'm gonna go ahead and outline the entire chick here. And we're just making sure that we are letting it drag, lifting that wrist up a little bit. And then if you mess up, you can always wipe it off, which I'm about to do right now. Do it again. Making sure we're squeezing from the top of that icing, making sure there's no icing above your thumb. Always want to be right on top of it. Kate said, peeps are disgusting, but they're so cute. Yeah, I know. It's like you want to buy them because they look cute, but they just, bleh. I mean, I'm sure people like them because they still sell them, obviously, but I don't know. I feel like if you did a poll, like most people would not like them, but they're so cute. And it's like one of those cute things to put in an Easter basket because they're just so cute and Eastery. Okay, so just like I was talking about, once you have the full outline, you're going to do a line. You'll see where it divots in on the left side, and we want to basically mirror what we see on the bottom and do a curved line to where his little tail ends. Something kind of like that. And then you only have a very small amount of the yellow icing, the thin one, because this is all that we're using it on. And so for something like this, I mean, a little bit of icing goes a long way. So a lot of times when I'm doing classes, people will be like, I don't have enough icing. And I'm like, trust me, because for this little chick, all you need is about this much icing. So see, compared to the rest of it, all you need is about this much. So of course, if you only had that much, it's a little harder to like have your hand around it. So, you know, you want enough in it to kind of be above that icing, but you really only use a very small amount, you know? Okay, so we're going to cut a bigger hole in this one. And then we're going to do the top part first and let the bottom one stay as it is. But just like you did on the bunny, drop it in, spiral it in, and then use that toothpick, swirl it out. As I'm swirling, I kind of like circle with the toothpick as I push it out. So I'm dragging and I'm also swirling it. And then the first thing you do is your sprinkles. Sorry, I know it's blurry. You're gonna drop in these sprinkles. We should have enough. And then you're gonna take one little black sprinkle and put it in about there. So his little eye right next to his beak. And then we're leaving the bottom part just like that for now. And we want it to dry for a little. I mean, it doesn't need to be that long, but probably gonna let it dry for about, I don't know, a minute or two. So a lot of times the cookies actually look prettier when they dry. So when you have the icing in, it's very shiny, glossy. When you take pictures of it, it's like the light, you know, kind of reflects off of it when it's a wet, you know, icing. But then the next day, pretty much the next day, 12 hours or so, it's very like, it's like a matte finish. My icing still kind of retains some of that gloss, but they look prettier when they're dry. So like, I look at this and I'm like, that looks so pretty. I actually didn't put the sprinkles on that one for some reason. But it's just very interesting that when it dries, to me, it looks nicer than when you do them. And another interesting fact is the icing darkens when it dries. So you think about, like, I remember my mom, she would always, for some reason I have this ingrained in my mind, but whenever we moved somewhere new, which was pretty often, I think we moved every like 1 or 2 years, we would always get to paint our room, and she would give us, you know, like the swatches and say, what color do you want, but just remember that it's going to dry darker. So it's like that shade next to it is how it's really going to dry. So you always want to go with the one that's like a little bit lighter. It's the same thing with the icing, is it'll dry typically about a shade darker. It's not like a drastic difference, but a lot of times with like black, brown, red, purple, blue, like the dark colors, it's very interesting when you're doing it. You're like, ooh, I don't know if this is black enough. And then the next day you're like, oh, that's black enough, because it definitely dries like a shade darker. So just a little bit of fun facts for you as we wait for it to dry. And we're now going to do the bottom part here. And we're going to do just that little sliver. You might not even need your toothpick. You can probably squeeze it in there. Squeeze until it hits both sides. You might need your toothpick for up on the top, which is like a tighter space. And then you're gonna take your ice or your sprinkles, sprinkle it on. These are actually not just sugar. They're it's called sanding sugar. So it's like a sprinkle sugar. It's a little bit thicker and coarser than just regular sugar. But then they also have these sprinkles that are like chunkier, like rocks of sugar. I don't know. So just think, if you ever want to buy these for the future for decorating purposes, it's called sanding sugar. Okay, and just like that, your first and your second cookie are complete. Good job. How are we doing? Good? All right, let this guy dry over with his little peep friend over there. And we will do our next one, which, what do we want to do? Let's do the bunny. So you have a chocolate bunny. However, I have both, but it would be very hard for me to show you. Like, you might not be able to see it very well if I do it on the chocolate bunny. So I'm actually going to decorate on the vanilla bunny so that you can like see it a little bit better. And what we'll need for this is our thick brown. So again, Sharpie line, thick brown, and we want to have our sprinkles like this ready to go, because the first thing we're going to do are the ears. So I will say, anytime you have a cookie that has sprinkles, if you put the sprinkles in at the end, they're going to get everywhere. So like if everything is wet and I go to add the sprinkles right here, it's going to stick to everything. So if you have like an area where you want those sprinkles to only be in that area, you want to do the icing in there first and then put the sprinkles on. For instance, I did an LSU virtual class that was a stadium, and I didn't take this advice myself and I was just not thinking, I forgot. And we did one part was the sky, and then we did the green, and it was like the sky, it was like the stadium, there were sprinkles that were people for the stadium, and I put them in last, and then it got into like the field part, which was just a mess. So just remember, if you ever have like one specific area that is going to have sprinkles, you want to do that icing first, put those sprinkles in, because then you can clean off the area before you do the rest of the icing. So the first thing we want to do is cut that little hole in this thick brown. All right, so we've done this a couple of times, so hopefully you're kind of starting to get used to it. Cutting the hole is a little tricky. It's okay if it's a little bit, bigger, but for beginners, sometimes cutting a bigger hole is fine. You just want to make sure that it's not too small, because you want it to be like a barrier. So anytime you cut that hole, just make sure it's big enough, but not too big. It's that perfect, using this worksheet as a template, it's that perfect amount. You want it from that line to here is where you're going to cut if it's a brand new bag. Okay, so the bunny ears, this is going to be the hardest part of the whole class, is this bunny. So on our bunny, you've got the chocolate one again, okay? You have 2 ears. So we basically want to mirror how the ears are shaped, but we're going to do it inside. And so if you want to watch me first, I know that his ear right here is about that big. So I want to go pretty close to the edge, and I'm just going to do kind of like a little teardrop sort of shape right in that space there. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, so that we look something like that. And I'll go ahead and do both the chocolate and the vanilla. I just wanted you to be able to see it real good on that vanilla one. And then what we're going to do next is cut a tiny hole. That tiny hole is going to be in the thin brown. And you want to cut the same kind of hole as you did on the outline. So we're going for sort of a smaller one, only because this surface area is very tiny. So we want to be able to get in there. So you're going to cut about the same amount as the outline one. We're going to drop that icing in the middle here. It's not going to take much because it's a small area. And then you're pretty much going to go crazy with these sprinkles. So we're going to take the white sprinkles and kind of just pour them on. They're going to go all over the place, which is fine. We just want to get them all on that brown. Some of them are not going to like go directly on it. So then that's when we're going to take our toothpick, and you can use your toothpick to kind of push these in to make it look a little bit more perfect. Sometimes what I do is I'll dip my toothpick actually into the icing, And then I'll grab a sprinkle and place it exactly where I want it to go. But whatever you do, pushing it in, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. And then you're gonna brush them off of the part of the cookie that's not iced. Just like that. And I'm gonna try to quickly do this one as well. So that's one way to do these ears. I kind of came up with this myself. I wanted to, you know, add some sprinkles to it because I just think sprinkles are fun. But yeah, on the chocolate cookie, it'll look like this. And then the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna outline the rest of the bunny. So now we're gonna need, again, our brown, our thick brown. Yes, Kate said, this icing is much easier to work with than the last class. Yes, indeed. This is how she took my spring class for the first time. It was right after my husband had been in the hospital for 2 weeks, and he had like literally just come home like the day before. Crazy time. This is how the icings usually are. So a lot of people that took that class, they obviously knew that that was not regular, but this is how the icings usually are. Is the thick ones, they should be pretty easy to spread and not giving your hand a cramp. But thick enough that they still kind of keep that hard consistency to do the details with. Okay, this next part is going to be, let's do the ears first. So I'm going to walk you step by step. Again, this is the hardest one that you'll have to do. But the first thing we want to do, or that I'm going to do, is I'm going to do the head first. So we're going to cut off the ears, and I'm going to do it in one step so you can kind of see. But we're going to outline the head, and when you get to where the ears are, you're going to stop and cut those ears off. So it's going to be like that. So if you want to do that step first, go for it. And then we're going to do the rest of his body. I've just decided that he's going to be a boy. And so this part's, you know, easy because you're just going to go with the outline of the cookie. And you're going to meet back up to the top where you started here. Just make sure you've got, you know, if you started and stopped at lines, you want to make sure that they're now touching and that there are no gaps in that, that barrier. Make sure that it's completely enclosed for that icing. And we have 4 more segments that we're going to create. So again, this is the hardest one out of them all. So the next one, let's do the ears. So we're going to do the bottom ear first. The bottom ear, you're going to create a line that's going to go right through the middle, touching the head, go right through the middle here, and then follow the rest of the ear on the bottom. It's going to be pretty close to that icing. It might even be touching it, and that's fine. Like seriously, you know, if you have no space between here and the middle part, that's fine. All right. And then we're going to do the top parts as well. So the top one, again, you already created the line going through the middle, so this one's a little easier. You're just going to do the outline of this ear and then make it touch the bottom ear. Can you imagine me doing this on the chocolate cookie? Like, you totally would not be able to see what I was doing. You're like, now, where's the line? All right. 2 more things. So the first one is going to be easy. The second one will be a little harder. The next one we're going to do is just fill in. So this right now, his little tail is like a little semicircle. We're going to complete the circle. So try to kind of mirror it. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you want to create a little circle with his tail, or for his tail. If you don't like the way it looks, you can wipe it off. Sometimes I take my toothpick and I'll kind of like push it a little bit so that it's more of a perfect circle. And then the next one's going to be a little bit harder. So his little leg. Alright, so you see he's got, kind of looks like a stocking or a boot. So you see where his little leg is here. We're going to come up a little bit, then come in, and then do about a semicircle. So I'll do it first if you want to just watch. So come up a little bit, come in, so you have his little foot, and then you're going to create a curved line for his leg, and then it's going to basically stop just a little bit above the tail. This one might be a little trickier, so if you do want to try it out and then redo it if you need to, that's fine. Okay, so remember how we have our segments, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 segments, and so we want them to be very separated when they dry. So that's why we're actually going to do the head and body part and the tail only, and then we're going to let it dry. We're going to do another cookie, and then we'll come back and we'll do the rest. So we have our thin brown icing. Now remember, you cut a very tiny hole, so if you want, you can cut a little bit bigger. Unless you cut too big of a hole last time, then you won't want to do this. But you will want 2 of your sprinkles ready, or you can have 1 for the eye, and then you can do a little pink nose later if you want. So if that sounds good to you, then you'll just need 1 of the sprinkles for the eye, and then when it dries, we'll do a little pink for the nose. Or you can do the nose and the eye, both black sprinkles. But no matter what you do, for the first step, all we want to do is the body part. So I cut a little bit of a bigger hole. And now I'm going to flood his head and his body. And I don't have to get into those corners because that's why I have the toothpick. But I just do the outline, and then I make sure that I've got it all in the middle with no holes or gaps. And then I can take my toothpick and get into some of those harder places here. Alright, and then while it's still wet, we're going to take that sprinkle and drop it in kind of where you see where mine is. Whoops, that was way too low, so now I'm going to take my toothpick and I'm going to push it to where I want it to go. One little eyeball. Alright, and then we're going to leave the leg as is, but we're going to do the little tail here. then we'll let him dry. So I'm opting out to do, I'm gonna do the pink nose, but you can also do the little nose if you're a beginner and you're not feeling so confident in your skills to detail a nose. Then you can just do the black sprinkle for that part if you would like. But we will let him dry, and then we will do our next one, which is going to be the vanilla egg. So, we're going to keep him close, but I'm just going to move him over a little bit. And the next one is going to be the egg. Your paper probably has a whole bunch of sprinkles on it. So our next color that we haven't used yet is going to be our bluish kind of turquoisey color. And so we'll have our thick one first. We're going to outline with the thick one, and then we're going to flood with the thin one. However, before we do that, this is where you're going to grab your paintbrush and your cup or your bowl of water. I'm going to put, we only need a few drops of water, really not that much. And then you're going to have your edible gold. Okay, because we want this one to be ready for when we go in and do it. So what we're going to try, I've done this one time in a virtual class before. It's probably like all over the place, which is totally fine. But this is probably where you're going to want to grab that glove. And so you have one glove that you're going to put on one hand. It really doesn't matter which one. But we're going to put a couple of drops of water into this little container. So best way to do that, you can take, if this paintbrush is in a decent quality, it might be able to do this, but you're going to take your paintbrush in your water. We're going to get it wet, and then the paintbrush will be wet, and we can use that to drop in some of the water. However, it's probably really not going to work that way. So the other thing we can do is just take this water and drop in. We just want to be careful not to put in too much. So we want to drop in just a little bit. I'm going to kind of push it in with my why do I keep saying toothbrush? Paintbrush. And then once we get a few drops of water in there, we're going to mix it up. And it actually looks like we'll need some more water because we want it to be kind of like a liquidy paste. And so let's just drop in a little bit more. And then you're going, it's so weird. This edible glitter is, or edible gold is so weird. But we're gonna mix it up so we get kind of like a bit of a liquidy paste. Mine is still pretty thick, so I am gonna add a little bit more water. Oh, this is so weird. I don't often do it in like a plastic container, and so it definitely is different in like a gold container. All right, once you do that, we're gonna leave it as is for a bit. Okay, we're about to use it, but we first want to do our teal, and so thick turquoise bluish color. Cut that hole, and we're just gonna outline this egg. All of this will make sense in a little bit, I promise. The gold, you're probably thinking, what am I using that for? Well, I'll show you in just a minute. So we're outlining the egg first with this bluish color. Then we're going to flood it with the blue. And then we're going to take that gold and we're basically going to splatter it onto the cookie to make it look like a speckled egg. This is kind of the best thing in my mind that I could have figured out a way to make it look speckled. So take your thinner icing, cut that hole in it. a little bit bigger than the outline. You're probably almost a pro at this part. You're gonna bring it all in, spiral it out, make sure you've got quite a bit in there so you're not sitting here forever with the toothpick. And while it's still wet, so after you do this, that's when we're going to splatter it on. Now make sure that you don't have any other cookies kind of in the way, that when you splatter it, it gets all over all the cookies. We just want it to get on this particular cookie. So the reason why you have the glove is because if it gets on your hands, it really doesn't matter. I was just thinking of a way to make it a little bit less messy. But we are going to want to take the finger that has the glove is going to be the one that's like creating the splatter. So if you want to watch me first, I've got this little gold paste on it. I'm going to pull it back with my finger, and then I'm going to let it fly. Make sure you've got enough on, and we're literally just splattering this gold paint onto the cookie. And once it kind of, it's random, it's crazy. Once it kind of looks how you want it to look, then you don't have to splatter anymore. You're gonna have some that are a little bit, you know, more defined than others. But yeah, that is a messy way to make it somewhat look like a speckled egg. Where are my speckled eggs? Like the speckled egg. It does get messy, and that's why I gave you that paintbrush. Now what you can do is you can actually keep this gold if you want. You can just cover it, and if you want to use it, you know, within the next couple of days, you can do so. You'll just want to you know, mix it up again, but a little bit goes a long way. And so I get this from the same place that I get the bags, which is called Truly Mad Plastics. And then they have, this one is the edible gold, but they also have silver, rose gold, and then this color. And it's pretty cool. It's not often used for this effect necessarily, but oftentimes you'll use it with vodka. We used water, but a lot of times you'll mix it with a clear alcohol like vodka. And then you paint it onto things, and it creates this nice shiny gold coat on top, which is really pretty. It's really popular for weddings, bridal showers, and that sort of thing. But that's a new way to do something like this. Okay, so we're done with the gold. You can take the glove off if it's super messy, or even if you used it. What did y'all think about that? Was that fun? Your third cookie is now also complete. You might want to use your napkin if you've got, you know, some of that gold all over the place. And then now what we're going to do is come back to our bunny. Little paint splatter party in the house. All right. So now we can do the ears and the leg. I'm not too worried about, you know, separating the ears, and so we're actually just going to go ahead and, you know, fill in the ears and fill in the leg, and then we will let it dry, and then like after the next cookie, then we'll do the little ribbon and the nose if you want to do that nose. But for right now, let's go ahead and do the leg part. So again, you know, getting pretty close, or if you know, if you're a little bit more advanced, you can also, you know, come right up next to it. When I'm doing cookies on my own, I actually do come up right next to each segment, and I don't really very often use the toothpick. But when I'm teaching a class for beginners, I often just get really close to it, and then I'll use the toothpick to just sort of push it into that segment so that it doesn't over flood into it. It'll just be right next to it. And then it helps us to get into those little corners. And then we'll do the ears. So the ears are going to be a little tricky because they're so narrow. And so what we're going to do is basically wherever you're able to, you can fill it in. And then if it gets super, super narrow, what you can do is you can drag that icing with your toothpick. So for instance, I put in a little bit more icing in the spots that I could reach, and then I take my toothpick and I drag it to kind of cover those narrower spots. So that's a little trickier. You can also go back over it with the thicker icing if you find that this is really difficult. And it's also okay if you color over those sprinkles. So I'm just saying that there's a few options that we can do here. We can also dot it in and then use that toothpick to kind of spread it out a little bit more. And then we'll do it on both of them, both sides. This one I have a little bit more room, so I'm not as worried about that. Okay, I'm like quiet because I'm concentrating. And then once you've got all that thin icing in, then we can let him dry. And we'll do the next cookie and then we'll come back to him. Then we'll have a couple of closing statements and some door prizes, and that'll be it. So a bit of a quicker class actually, because it's just a little bit more easy, but I always do door prizes. I just usually do them in the middle as like a break. So this is a little bit different that I'm doing it at the end, but that's just because it's a little bit of a quicker class. However, if you have any questions at the end, that would be a great time for some Q&A. I feel like I've kind of gone over a lot of stuff, so you might not have questions, but just in case you do. For the next thing, we actually need to have one of our containers. So obviously not our gold container, but either one of our sprinkles, we actually need to use this. So you can either, if you really want to save it, you can dump the sprinkles into a Ziploc bag or a cup. I'm just going to dump one into the other because I want one of these containers for the next cookie. And this is by far the most fun, I think, out of the 5. But we do need a container because what we're going to do is we're going to have it upside down right in our workspace right there. And let me tell you how I saw this idea. So somebody that I follow on Instagram, she had these cookies that looked like chocolate eggs. And I looked at them and I was like, how did she do that? Because the icing was completely covering the cookie. Like you couldn't even see the cookie like underneath. So what she ended up doing, she showed how she did it. She had it on this like cooling rack, and she had all the cookies on the cooling rack, and then she basically just like dumped a bunch of icing on each one, and as it, you know, gravity pulled that icing down, it just went into the cooling rack, and then when it dried completely, she took it off and it was a completely covered cookie. So we are doing a version of that without the cooling rack. So we're taking our chocolate cookie and we are going to place it right on our upside down container as like the little table underneath. So the cookie is on top of it, it's overlapping, like we're going to dump in a bunch of that chocolate icing and let it fall. So if you want to watch me first and kind of see how I'm going to do this, that would be something that, you know, might make more sense if you watch me first and then you do it. This is super fun. I'm really excited to do this one. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your thin brown icing and try not, you know, make sure it's not going to fall anywhere, and don't try to, you know, push it off with this icing. You don't want to touch it, but we're going to put all of this on here in the middle. Then you're going to cover the sides, and then you're going to just dump in a whole bunch of icing on the sides, and you're going to keep putting in enough to where it falls off of the sides. So you might put a bunch in and then kind of like look at it and make sure it's completely like dropping all on the sides. So like you know, it's harder because I'm working with cameras here, but I'm looking all around and I'm making sure, and I'll try to show you, that it's going to be dropping like that. And gravity is pulling it down, but you want it to be completely all on all sides. It's completely covered. And so that's going to be the first step. So go ahead and do that. If you were watching me first, go ahead and do what I just did. You know, don't worry about, you know, you want to use quite a bit of icing because we're not using it for anything else. So you can go ahead and use a good amount of that brown icing and just cover the cookie completely. Let the excess icing just kind of fall onto your workstation here. And then I'll show you the next step that we'll do. So go ahead and do that first. This is it's so much fun. Oh, I love it. All right, I'm gonna give y'all a moment here and then I'll tell you what we're about to do next. Trying to get it so you can see an angled view of it for this next part. So it's a little bit messy. It's gonna be a little messy. All right, once you have it all on there, I'm gonna show you what we're gonna do next. And I might have to tilt this up again. But you're going to take a toothpick and we're going to take away the excess parts. So very carefully, just kind of like removing, you know, all around. Make sure that that excess kind of comes off. I tried to do it when it was dry and it was harder. So then I decided to do it when it was still wet and it was a little bit easier. The only hard part is, you know, kind of getting it all around. You might not really be able to see it, but we just want to take off that excess icing, put it in a napkin or whatever, and kind of just look all the way around and take off the excess. This is hard with the cameras. I'm like, All right. Cool. Okay, now we're not done yet. now we're going to take our yellow, pink, and blue that are the thicker ones. So Sharpie line blue, Sharpie line yellow, Sharpie line pink. And we are going to create some lines on this just to make it look a little bit fancier, because it's just a bland chocolate egg right now. So here is our finished product from before. This was made like, I don't even know, like 2 months ago. So I like to do one color at a time. So if I do my pink first, I like to wipe off the end, because if it's been exposed to oxygen, it gets a little crusty on the end. So I'm going to take my thick pink, and this part's a little tricky because what I'm going to do is, instead of just going right on top, I'm actually going to wrap those lines around. So I'm going to come here, and then I'm going to come over, and then I'm going to wrap it around. The cookie is not going to move though. So here is like basically trying to do this so you can see it. I come over here, I wrap it around, and then I come on the top, and then I look over and I wrap it around the other side. And I'm gonna just do the pink for now. Pink lines, probably about 3 or 4 of them. And I'm not worried about them being perfect. I kind of want them to, some of them be straighter than others. You want to let that icing catch on one side and then come over across the top. And then touch it to catch on the other side. So kind of fun. And then you'll do the same thing with the yellow and the blue. So I'll do yellow next, and I'll have it be like right above the pink one every time. So touching it to let it catch, that's probably the hardest part here. You squeeze it out. Once a little bit comes out, you want to touch it to the brown. And then bring it over. And then to end it, again, you're going to touch to end. Alright, and then we'll do the blue next. And we'll have a very pretty chocolate covered egg. Kind of like a Reese's. Alright. Takes a little bit of time to do the lines. I love this blue color. So pretty. I hope you are enjoying this as much as I am. This is probably my favorite design that I did this year. And I hope that you like it as well. It's a creative way of doing some cookies that look like chocolate covered eggs. And then once you're done with your lines, then this cookie is also complete. So I'd say the lines, the wraparound was probably the hardest part. And then this one's gonna be interesting because you really want to let it dry before you pick it up. So if you're in a place where you can leave it for a few hours, that would probably be best. Kind of leave it right there. If you are not able to do that, then what you probably want to, if you really need to transport it, then you can kind of grab underneath and try to like carefully pick it up. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this container, hopefully this works out, and I'm just gonna push it over to kind of let it dry because I don't want to mess it up, but I also want to kind of use the space in the middle. So yeah, then you have this nice looking chocolate egg. So here's the finished one, right? So when it's completely dry on the bottom, it's going to obviously look like this. And you know, you'll kind of see where you sort of picked off the excess one and all, but from the top it looks great. It's like you know, you can't really tell that it's, I guess you can tell it's a chocolate covered cookie, but it looks pretty nice. So that's one way to be creative with these. What did y'all think of those if you're taking it with me? Love to hear your thoughts on that one. And then our next one, we're almost done. 4 out of 5 cookies are done. We're going to do our bunny. So I'll get back to our normal. We can do a couple of, so our advertised one is a yellow bow ribbon. However, you have 3 colors to choose from. And again, this is going to be with the Sharpie line. So you've got pink, blue, and yellow. You can do whatever of those colors that you want. If you want to do blue, pink, yellow, whatever you choose. Maybe the one hole that maybe was a little smaller, like if you have one that was a little bigger, it might be hard to detail it. But if you want to do the nose, we're definitely going to do that with the pink. And then I'm just going to stick with the yellow for the ribbon. So it's like, do you want baby girl, baby boy, or neutral? We are going to do the nose if you want to do that with me. What I do for the nose is I do a little bit of like a heart-shaped nose. And how I do that is I basically create a teardrop, 2 teardrops. So I take it, I squeeze, and then I kind of drag it down. So I pull it away by kind of dragging it down. And then I do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to squeeze, and then I'm going to drag and let it meet that other teardrop. And if I'm unhappy with how it looks, I can use my toothpick to sort of manipulate how I want it to look. And then that's your little heart nose. That's funny. A lot of times when we get to the details, people are like, I had fun, but I'm not quitting my day job. I'm not gonna be, you know, doing this for a living. Because it's usually at about this point that, you know, before this, people are like, oh, I got it, I'm good. You know, the flooding is fun. You're learning the outlining. And then you get to the detailing and you're just like, yeah, this is a hot mess. But I mean, it's all fun, but it's funny that people are like feeling good, and then the last, you know, 30 minutes they start to feel a little bit less confident, but they still have fun, which is all that really matters in the end, right? And that they taste good. That's all that matters. Okay, so for our little ribbon, we're going to do, first thing is going to be a curved line. And so you're wrapping it around his neck, but if you do a straight line, it looks too like rigid. So think of like if you're looking at a bunny and you know it is a real bunny and it's three-dimensional, it's going to have a little bit of a curve to it. So to make it look a little bit more two-dimensional, we let it catch, and then we do more of like a curved kind of line here. So it looks like it's kind of wrapped around his neck. And then this is our last thing for the entire class, is doing the little bow. So we've got 2 teardrops, and then you're going to squiggle the little lines and do an added extra dot for the knot. So we start in the middle, and then you're going to come up, you're going to do a teardrop, and you're going to do that on both sides. So that'll be first. And then we'll do our little like squiggles. So for the squiggles, as you move down, you're also going to kind of very small movements, go left and right with your hand. So we'll be right where the teardrops are as you move left and right and come down. And then same thing on the other side. And then the dot is going to be just a little dot right in the middle to make it look like a little knot. And then once you've done that, he is done as well. Great job! I hope you feel accomplished, proud of your cookies. And we have all 5 looking like this. Awesome. So again, a couple of closing statements. First of all, thank you so much for signing up for this class. We had almost 30 people that signed up, which was great. And typically in a class I've got about 15 to 30, so it was just so much fun. I wanted to do something different as far as, you know, doing the candy themed one, because I've never done this before. So I'm just so happy that you guys joined me, and I hope they had fun. I know some of you are taking it pre-recorded, so some of you will be taking it tomorrow or Sunday, saving it for Easter. And I do hope you have a great Easter, and just finding new ways to be creative during this time. If you want to come do this with me again, like I said in the beginning, coming up next week, I'll be selling my bingo tickets, which will be cookie bingo fun themes. They won't just be numbers, they'll be like quarantine themed bingo and baking themed bingo, and then I'll have some do-it-yourself kits, and then I'll have my Cinco de Mayo class as well as my Mother's Day class, which will be posted next week on Friday. So like I said, I always do some door prizes. And so I'm going to give me just a minute, and I'm going to do door prize. I totally forgot to create my little spreadsheet here like I normally do, which I'm sorry about. But the door prize is going to be a couple of items, and a couple of people are going to win. And so I always do different things, like sometimes I do discount codes, sometimes I do, what else do I do? Give you cookies, give you products, like, you know, different things like that. But today I'm going to give, so let's see, 4 people are going to win a door prize. You are going to get one of these cookies that I created, as well as a cookie scribe, which I will explain what that is. But a cookie scribe that I've made personally, it's handmade by me. It's basically this toothpick except a non-disposable one made out of metal and beads, and it's got charms, and it's really cute. It'll have like a little KitchenAid mixer charm on it, and you can basically, it's a cookie decorating tool that you can use, but they're not toothpicks, you don't throw them away. So that'll go to 4 people. Will win one of these cookies and a cookie scribe, and I'll probably end up mailing it to you tomorrow. So you'll get that in the mail sometime next week. I've actually got a girl she's been running errands for me, and she was like a college student that just wanted some extra cash, so I'm not leaving my house at all. So she comes like every few days when I have packages, and I'm like, hey, can you take this to the post office? And she'll just run it to the post office. And then the other cool thing is that UPS actually comes and picks up. So like on Monday, I think it was, no, Tuesday, I literally had like 35 packages at our front door, and they just came, and he took them all on one dolly and took them on the truck, which was like awesome. And that was it. And I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. So pretty cool. Okay, so we have 4 people. Y'all ready? We have, give me 1 second. If you're taking the class pre-recorded, you do still get to participate in this. You'll just get an email saying that you won. Okay. All right, the first person is going to be Michael Griscom, a friend of mine on Instagram. So you'll get one of these cookies and a little cookie scribe. All right, next person is going to be Jill Ballard. She also has won a cookie and a cookie scribe. 2 more people. We have Natalie Ferrand. She's actually local. I ended up like shipping her cookies like, I don't know, a couple years ago, and then she found me by searching for me. She's here in Gainesville, and she found me and was like, that's the same person. And so she's taking the class for the first time today, which was really cool. And then the next person is going to be Margie O'Connor, who's also a regular and has been she takes every class, y'all. All right, that is it. So y'all 4 lucky winners will get one of these cookies and a handmade cookie scribe. I also do sell those on my website if you're interested. But that is it. I hope that you have a great Easter. Hope you had fun. Enjoy the rest of Good Friday, and enjoy the weekend. Feel free to message me, or if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me. And I had so much fun with y'all. Enjoy and have a good night. Bye.